Grace. And Grace is going to give us a speech entitled, and she's probably more qualified to speak on memories than most of the people in the room, right? Having accumulated more memories than most. But one memory that I have of her, and I was so glad, seriously, that she decided to agree to come and be a speaker, is she is one of the early Speakers Bureau chairs. So, Grace LeFevre,
It was very late. We'd been traveling all day. Started our journey before the sun was up. And now we crossed the bridge into Temiskaming, Quebec. And we had 12 miles to go to Kippawa, but the road ended. There was no road. So an uncle met us there with a push car. Push car. And he pushed the push car and my mother and I around the lake. And I heard the loons. And I heard the sounds in the woods. And we finally arrived in Kippawa and made our way to Granny's shack. And the door opened, and here is the specter lit by a single coal oil lamp in the room behind her. And my mother said, "Mom, this is Grace." Oh. So this is Grace. Well, this is an awful late hour for this young lady to be up. So now I want you to come around the corner, Grace. I want you to get ready for bed. Now this is your cousin Shirley. You get into bed with Shirley right now, and I don't want to hear another peep out of you two girls. Well, I got into bed. I'm sure I had a tear. And Shirley reached around and she took my hand. She said, "It's okay, Grace. It's okay." And those two 4-year-old girls bonded for life. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guests, you're so welcome. Many years passed. Shirley graduated high school in Temiskaming, French-speaking Temiskaming. And she married a fellow by the name of Jerry Barb. And after they were married, they were coming down to meet my parents, Shirley's aunt and uncle, and her cousin Grace. So I waited. I couldn't wait to meet this fellow, Jerry Barb, that Shirley married. And he arrived. He and his bride in a 1958 yellow Pontiac convertible. This guy's an extrovert. Jerry spoke pretty good English, but he was from a French-speaking family. And he, on this trip, was taking his bride down to the beaches of Sarasota, Florida, and then home, where they had purchased a house in Temiskaming across from the church. Now, Jerry's first job was with the provincial fish and game, and he was pretty proud of the government boat that he had on the lake. It was the biggest, baddest, fastest boat. Nobody could get away from Jerry Barr. And one day, he came across a couple of people in a boat fishing, and he went up and he said, "Good morning, bonjour. How are you doing with the fishing?" "Oh, the fishing is great, thank you." "Well, I'd just like to check your license." "We don't have a license." "You have to have a license. You can't fish on this lake without a license." "We have diplomatic immunity. We're from the USSR and connected to McGill University. We don't need a license." Jerry says, "If you're going to fish on this lake, you're going to need a license. Sir, we have privileges that you obviously are not aware of." I'm going to cut my story short. Several years later, Jerry was in Germany with the forestry department, and he heard that the Russian government had opened their borders to Canadian citizens. He was so close. He said, "I can't go home without getting my passport stamped from Russia." He made some phone calls, he found out he could go, and he boarded a small plane to Moscow. The man he sat beside didn't say much to him until he said something like, "Bonjour." "Bonjour, monsieur. Parlez-vous français?" "Oui, little." "Where are you from, Jerry?" He said, "Oh, I'm from a small town in Kippawa." Not Kippawa, Temiskaming, Quebec. He said, "Isn't that unusual? I have been to that town, Temiskaming." No. How can that be? That can't be. You've been to Temiskaming? That small town? He said, "Well," he said, "there was an incident happened when I was there that you might have heard of. There was a young girl jumped off the bridge into the Ottawa River. And there was a man walking on the bridge that evening, and he saw this happen, and he jumped in after her and was able to get her through the currents and to shore." Jerry said, "I remember that incident very well." The man said, "Well, I was the man on the bridge." Jerry said, "The woman whose life you saved was my sister." Mr. Toastmaster.